And welcome to today's edition of Dr. Carole's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carole Lieberman. Well, we have an amazing show for you today. I'm really looking forward to it. It's called, and you'll understand what the title means eventually, Is the Soul More Than Biology? How One Mother and Her Neurologically Injured Son Are Challenging Modern Science. So today we have both the mother, Katie Asher, and her son, Houston. So welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you guys so
Hi.
much for having us on and listening, everyone, all the listeners.
Um, this is really a profound show. This is really a profound concept. And so I would like to start with like by following you on your journey. When you were pregnant, was there anything were you told anything about Houston while you were pregnant, or was it just a surprise when you delivered?
So I had what they considered a false positive alpha fetal protein test. And they sent me for genetic testing, and there was nothing. There were absolutely no markers at all. And they were really, they said that, oh, those happen sometimes. That's just part of how the proteins were developing as he was going along. And they said that really there was nothing to worry about. And when he was born, it was true. He was perfect. He had a 10 APGAR score. He had
Huh.
absolutely everything. The only thing that happened after he was born was after he was born. It was back when they started making everybody leave the hospital immediately.
Was this, why were they making people leave the hospital?
This is back when insurance didn't want to pay for maternal care, and they
Ah,
were making you, as soon as you delivered, you had to
yes,
leave.
yes,
I don't know
yes,
if you remember that. It was back in the 90s.
yes, I do.
Yes. And so after he left, or after we left, and they would send someone, a nurse, to check on you. And they decided that his color was off at that point, and he had jaundice,
When he was how old?
just a few days old.
Okay.
And then after that, they did the little suitcase with the lights to reduce his bilirubin.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then he was perfect. And that continued until he received his DTP Hib shot. This was the precursor to the DTaP. This is actually the shot that Big Pharma was given immunity for, that Reagan signed into law. It was that particular shot that was causing so much damage. I was a very young mom. I had no idea that I should even be concerned.
How old are you, Houston?
You want to try and say it?
29.
29. Okay. So
And
next year is a big year.
it is. He told me
Yeah.
he wanted to be living independently by 30. I'm like, okay, we might not get there, but we're working on it.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So go
so
ahead.
when he received that shot, um, a few days after, he started getting these little red freckles, and I didn't know what that was. And I thought he was having like a rash or a reaction to new food or something, because it was the time of his development where I was introducing new foods.
Uh-huh.
So and the second day there were a few more, and I thought, that's really odd. He seems very young to be getting freckles. And then the next morning I went in to get him out of his crib, and he was completely covered in these red freckles.
Huh.
And I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. So I called the doctor, and I was sure they were going to say, oh, it's just a rash, it'll go away. And the nurse said, come to the doctor's office immediately. And it was a Saturday morning, which was odd. No, you got it. You got this. And so whenever no, you're good. Stay with me. Okay. You stay with me, right? Okay, stay with me. And whenever I took him into the doctor's, The doctor left the room and he came back and he said, "We've already had him admitted to Arnold Palmer Hospital. Would you like an ambulance?"
Would you like what? An
An
ambulance?
ambulance.
Huh, yeah.
And I said, "Well, why?" And he said, "We just need to run tests." And when I got to the hospital with him, they took him from me, and a hematologist came into the room, and she said, "Your son either has leukemia or immune thrombocytopenic purpura."
Oh, wow. Take your pick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those in your audience who don't know what that is, immune thrombocytopenic purpura is where your body, it's an autoimmune disease where your body begins killing off all of your blood platelets. It's caused by a cytokine storm. That's what the cytokine means. And I didn't know what well, I knew what leukemia meant. I didn't know what ITP meant. And so I was just waiting for the doctor to tell me what to feel. And they came back and they said he has ITP. And the hematologist said, "This is a vaccine injury." It wasn't even a question. And this is before the big push against, anti-vax or vax or,
Well,
this was
yeah, I was
well
just
before
thinking
that.
this is one of the early cases of why kids shouldn't be getting vaccines.
Yes. This was 1997.
Okay.
Houston is one of the oldest that this happened to. Not the oldest by any means, but one of the oldest. And whenever he went in and I did after that, I started noticing a few things that were odd. He suddenly started squinting like this, and he couldn't roll a ball anymore. And when I tried to play patty cake with him, it was like he couldn't get his hands to go together anymore. And this was something that we were doing all the time, obviously. And I didn't understand what that was. And then it was his MMR shot. And I was concerned because of his reaction the last time. And we had been given like multiple infusions of gamma globulin. Like this was like this huge course of action to reduce the activity of the cytokine storm in his body and restore normal immune function.
So did you sue the hospital or the doctor who gave him the injection or the pharmaceutical company?
Of course not, because there was absolutely no disclosure whatsoever. I didn't even know that I had that option, that was an option, or any information at all. There was zero disclosure. And I didn't know you could sue someone. No one ever mentioned vaccine court. There was zero disclosure at all. And I was certainly never told about adverse reactions from them.
Well, have you done something since? Have
you? Oh, I would say I'm quite bold at this point. But no, because what people don't realize is you can't. There's actually a 3-year limit before you can actually bring. And they took away. So they, throughout the years, they started doing things to increase the safety net for vaccine manufacturers. So there was this one time where people realized it was the aluminum, and I'll get to that in a minute. They realized it was the aluminum, and so they started saying, "Okay, well, we'll sue for the adjuvant as opposed to the vaccine itself." And then they changed the protection in the law to include all adjuvants and any ingredients in the vaccines, and then dismissed those cases without due process. And I've actually spoken to one of the fathers who was involved in that. So I know the details specifically.
Have you been in touch with RFK Jr.?
I've sent letters, I'm still waiting right now to have that opportunity to share our story with someone in government. But right now, it's important for just the world to hear the truth.
Yes, yes.
And I know that will happen one day because the story is so incredible. But basically, whenever we got to the MMR, I said to his pediatrician, I'm really concerned about him getting another vaccine.
Yeah.
And he said, that was a fluke. You have nothing to worry about.
Oh, wow.
The way my son reacted, and now that I've done the research, I understand what happened. And but basically, when he received the MMR, he had every single possible horrible reaction. And I don't mean to be, gross, but his feces became absolutely unbearable. It was acidic. It was making his bottom bleed. It was chronic diarrhea. He had huge, giant rashes on his face. He was screaming all the time. He was pushing his head on the ground. He was flapping his hands. He was putting his hands on his ears. He was squinting. This time, the squinting was like nonstop. And all of these things were happening. And all I could see was that my child was disappearing right in front of my eyes.
My child.
So did you get besides the thrombocytopenic, the ITP, did you get a diagnosis of autism?
Whenever he was, of course, the first thing I did was you try therapies, right? You think, oh, it's a hearing. Maybe he can't hear me. Maybe it's a speech delay. So you go through all of these other processes of elimination. And then he was given joint speech and OT. And all this time, we're still waiting for an appointment with a developmental pediatrician, because back then it would take like 6 months just to even get an appointment. And there was very little awareness. I remember sometimes, and this was when he would run away constantly. He was constantly trying to go to bodies of water and throw himself into bodies of water to try to, it felt like he was trying to drown himself, pushing his head on the floor.
Houston, do you remember this, do you remember going to bodies of water like lakes or pools or something like that and throwing yourself in them?
Yes, I had to feel my body, the water helped me know where my entire body is at once.
Houston is obviously very intelligent.
Very.
You use such you have a very good vocabulary.
It was, sometimes he uses words that I have to look up.
Oh, wow.
So whenever, and of course I didn't understand what was going on at the time, but whenever we finally got the diagnosis, he spent the entire time in the office just running around in circles. And the developmental pediatrician finally she was literally, she couldn't even sit down with him to like do a test. And I remember she finally kind of threw herself back exhausted and was just like, this is severe. Like there's no hope. And I didn't know what that meant for our lives.
When he was how old?
3.5. And this was pretty soon after he was hit because he ran away out the front door after some friends were visiting, and they come over and someone didn't lock the door, and he ran out the front door and was hit by a truck. And at 3 years old. And it was, it's astonishing with all of these near-death experiences, just how he is still alive. I'm gonna let him run to the restroom real quick.
Sure, sure.
Okay, come right back, okay? All right, he'll be right back.
Okay. So, I mean, he's obviously gotten a lot of rehabilitation. Um, did he go to school? How old was he when he went to some kind of special school?
Immediately, we started at 3. It was towards the end of his third year of life because he had to have the diagnosis first before we could receive services. And so he was 3.5 to 4 years old when we started in the public school system. And he received what you would consider special ed preschool. And unfortunately, they put him in front of videos and blocked him off and cornered him. And that was his education.
Oh, wow. Now, where is this? Where were you living at the time?
Georgia.
You still live in
Mhm. We're
Georgia?
still in Georgia.
Uh-huh.
And obviously there's been the reason that they corralled him was because he was always escaping and running away. So they were trying to keep him contained. Um, Unfortunately, they didn't have the understanding of what was actually going on in his body or his mind. And that created an environment where they didn't provide the right services because they didn't understand what was going on. And fundamentally, what has happened is the experts have used all of this from a behavior standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
They view all of it as behavior is equivalent to intelligence. And so they've measured all of this using that framework and that mindset, which I understand that's how the that field of science developed with
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of behavior influence in that field of study.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, and this is what Houston explained, is if you don't have control over your body, there is no intent. So and what this is a lack of motor control. So if you have a motor impairment, you don't have control over your body. So um, it would really be a false indication to try to determine someone's intelligence based on how their body behaves if they are not the one directing their motor.
Uh-huh. That makes total sense.
Mhm.
Um, we have to have the first it's time for the first break. So we will take a break. When we come back, I want to be able to be sure to give Houston a chance to explain what he was saying before we got on the air that he wanted to talk about, and that your book, I think, is primarily about. Um, and so when we come back, I mean, so let's sort of gear towards that that you can get to the spiritual part, in other
I
words.
would love that. That would be
Okay.
amazing.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take a
I'm going to
break.
go grab him real quick because I think he ran off. So I'm going to go grab him real
Okay.
quick.
Yes, please. Okay, so we're going to take a break now. We are talking about, is the soul more than biology? How one mother and her neurologically injured son are challenging modern science. The mother, who you've met, is Katie Asher. Her son is Houston, and it is so interesting. I think a lot of people will be surprised, but this does happen, that just because someone is impaired in one way doesn't mean that they're not intelligent, but that unfortunately, that's how people react a lot of times to people with autism or other kinds of neurological problems, that as if they're dumb. And as you saw, that is not the case with Houston. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to Dr. Carol's Couch, where we're having a really fascinating show, if I do say so myself. It's my guests who are fascinating. They are, well, they are the authors of a book called The Book of Heaven, a story of hope for the outcasts, the broken, and those who lost faith. It's a memoir written by my guests, Katie Asher, and her son, Houston. So welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Um, so I know I do want to hear like, well, let's put it this way. How old was Houston when you started realizing that he had this connection to heaven, to God, to the soul?
When he was 17 years old, and of course, all of the time before that, it was the worst type of autism that you read about in the books, you see on TV. That's the one we were living. There was no hope. No one gave us any hope. There would be every now and then there would be like a little glimpse of something that we're like, how did that happen? How did but nothing tangible that we could really believe in enough to invest in it.
Uh-huh.
And then when he was 17, um, I was working three jobs. I was a single mom by then, because my ex-husband was abusive and it was a very unhelpful or happy home life. So
Hmm.
I was a single mom with five kids working
Oh
three
my
jobs,
God.
trying to
Oh my
survive
God. Yeah.
with severe autism as well.
Uh,
And I came home from work. I was so completely exhausted. And I laid down on the couch just to rest. And he sat down at the end of the couch next to my feet. And mind you, he would never do something like that before. He was always jumping up and down, flapping his hands, making these booming noises, scripting Disney phrases, making all these vocalizations. He was running constantly, or shoving food in his mouth obsessively. We did not have peace. So when he sat down at my feet, I knew that was strange, but I was honestly so tired, I couldn't even acknowledge it. And then he reached over and very intentionally, he tugged at the blanket, just like you would to get someone's attention. And then he spoke.
oh my
And
goodness.
he said, Mama, with a completely clear voice, just like a young man. And I opened my eyes because I was in so much shock at the sound of him saying my name, which he'd never said before.
Hmm.
And he was looking directly into my eyes, which was also something he could not do. And that's when he said, I love you. Mama, I love you. And in that moment, I had a choice. And that was either believe in everything that the experts said, everything that I had lived, everything that was horrible and awful and gave us no hope, or believe in that one moment and believe in a miracle. And that is what I decided to do, was to believe in a miracle. And it was another almost 5 years before that miracle came. And it came in
Wait,
the
wait,
shape.
wait, 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 wait. What do you mean? He stopped talking to you?
That
That's
was
all that.
it. That was one moment. That was it.
Houston, do you remember this moment when you were 17? What was going on
The,
that you were able to speak to your mother, to tell her, I love you?
the LO, the locks on my SPEE, the locks on my speech came off. There was one moment that Jesus gave me when I open your mouth, when I open your mouth, tell her one thing that she can cling to for faith.
Wow.
I open your mouth, tell her one thing she can cling to for faith.
Wow.
And that's what I did. I clung to those words. And what was interesting that had happened around that time period was I was actually taking this yoga certification class, and we had to do those, like, you give your intention. And I thought, this is ridiculous and silly. And I was in a very hopeless place. And so when it came my turn, I gave my little vague intention, because I know, like, people don't care about what you're going through. They aren't interested. They're just there for themselves. No one was interested in our suffering or pain. And so I just gave something very general. And then what happened was the truth came out of my mouth without me even being able to stop it. And I said, oh, and I would like bad things to stop happening.
Stop happening.
And the instructor, she really confronted that hopelessness. And she said, why would you say that? And I said, well, that's all I've experienced. Why would I believe anything else? And she said, well, good has just as much chance of happening as bad. And I said, I know all about belief. You believe what you've experienced. That's what I've experienced. Why would I believe anything else? And she challenged me and said, I remember she sent me a bunch of articles, and one in particular really connected to me on a logical basis. And that was, look at anything around you, like look at like a pen or a chair or the table, and ask yourself this question: what was it before it was a chair or a pen or a table? And the answer is, it was an idea. It was a thought.
Right.
And the second question is just as important, which is, if no one had had that thought, would it exist? And it wouldn't. Right. And it was a fundamental shift in my mind, because I suddenly realized, like, my thoughts, anyone's thoughts, they become things. And I began to look around my life and see how my thoughts had become things. It's the absolute basis of creativity, obviously. All creativity comes from this idea that our thoughts, that spirit becomes matter, like it becomes real. But it becomes real because we think it, because we give it life from our thoughts. But the thought itself is just as real as the final product, as the thing we create. And it was that idea that my thoughts would become something real. It was in that moment, in that time of our lives, that this miracle with Houston happened, where he said, Mama, I love you. And so I had this framework to suddenly invest in this idea that I could believe in something good happening. I could believe in a miracle for my son. And it was that moment that I made the choice to believe in good, to believe not just in God. And when people ask me what's the big message of our book, I mean, there's so many, but the big one is, I used to believe in God, now I believe God. And I take him at his word. If he says he's true to his word, and he says that he is the Lord who heals, if he said he's the Lord who provides, if he says anything, then I'm going to take him at his word and walk in that trust and that faith. And that's what he wants for all of us, is to trust him.
Okay, so is this where we get to Houston, where you want people to know, Houston, to have hope in God, right? So why do you say that? Like how are we supposed to know to have hope in God? How did you get hope in God?
I have seen his throne. I have seen his hands with the holes that
that that
his
his
love
to
took.
took for me.
I've seen the holes that his love took for me.
The holes
I
that his
am holes, the holes in his hands.
Okay, I have seen God's
Don't make me do
I have
it.
seen his, I think he said throne. I think that's what it said. I have seen him
well, you said I have seen his throne, I've seen his hands,
that love and the holes that love took for me.
and the holes, Holes,
Yes,
that love.
took for me.
Okay, what does that mean? The holes that love took for me.
His hands bear the scars of the crucifixion, that nails were my sins nailed to the cross for my to be in him alone.
Say that last part again.
The last part was for my hope to be in him alone.
I see. So, do you go to church?
Yes.
Okay. And so, and even when you're not in church, do you pray a lot wherever you are to God?
Not.
Not helping to just sit and listen. We find that he is not found in the sitting or in the singing. He is found in the pleading
Huh.
and the praying,
Well,
believing.
so, um, have you read a lot of books, Houston, or is this coming mainly from your head? I mean, have you read these ideas,
This is
or
a
did you
funny,
come up with these ideas?
I should probably share a little bit more about what I learned about him to answer so he can answer that question.
Okay.
And so whenever he began to communicate, that happened. So I believed in that miracle for almost 5 years. And what was the answer to the miracle was 26 letters. And whenever we started coaching his motor, he started developing reliable motor to point to letters. And then he could communicate anything he wanted. And one of the first things he communicated independently was an answer to the question, if you could put any slogan on a t-shirt, what would it be? And he spelled, I'm in here. And I had no idea. I believed everything the experts had told me.
Huh.
And then of course, I'm like doing all these lessons with him, and they were age appropriate lessons. They were intelligent and interesting lessons. And I ran out of lessons so fast because he was just flying through all the material. So then I just started using whatever was available, and it was right around the 4th of July. So I started doing all this, American history. And then I asked if he knew the opening to the Declaration of Independence, and he starts spelling out the whole Declaration of Independence. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, I believe you. We can skip.
Well, had he read the Declaration of Independence?
Well, I didn't understand the scope of his spiritual gifts at this point.
Yeah.
So I was still learning. And then I kept pressing through different lessons and different material, and I was just astonished by how much he knew. And I said, how do you know so much? Where's this information coming from?
Right.
And it was almost like he was afraid to tell me, but he said, I'm special. And I'm like, of course you are, right? Like a mom.
Yeah.
And he was like, you don't get it. And he said, I can hear thoughts. And I didn't believe him. And so I start testing him over and over and over again. And he got every single test perfectly. And then I just started asking him questions in my mind without speaking. And he starts spelling out the answers to my questions. And of course, that was absolutely life changing. And I was overwhelmed with the weight of this. And remember what happened with the yoga class, right? And then that night, I remember just suddenly sitting up in bed and realizing, oh my goodness, thoughts are things. Thoughts are things. And what people don't realize is we think our thoughts are just in our mind, right? That they're just swimming around up there.
Right.
But in reality, they are energy. And that's what E equals MC squared means, is that energy and matter are the same thing, just measured in different ways. And it was Einstein who figured this out. And so if thought is energy, then it obeys the same laws of energy as all the rest of energy obeys. And that means that the very first being the law of conservation, which says that energy is neither created nor destroyed, it's only transferred. And so what happened with that vaccine injury was it demyelinated. The autoimmune encephalopathy basically causes demyelination in the brain of motor pathways, which that is the regression. But then because of the inflammation, the brain can't prune the sensory synapses, and it can't integrate the motor with the pruned sensory synapses, which is primitive reflex integration. And because of this, he's trapped in a body that he can't operate, but he's still completely there. And so instead of developing into his physical body, because of that inflammation and the cytokine storm, he starts developing into his etheric body, his spiritual body, with all of the associated gifts with that, and experiencing the metaphysical spiritual realm in Technicolor. And he's not the only one. The others have these same types of gifts.
So, Houston, do you have any friends who are similar to you?
You want to try and speak?
Wait, you know what? We need to take a break, but that'll give you time to think about that. We need to take a break. Today, you're listening to Dr. Carole's Couch. My guests are Katie Asher and her son, Houston. And when we come back, we will get the answer to that question. So stay tuned. And welcome back to Dr. Carole's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carole Lieberman. We're having a pretty amazing episode today, where we have the chance to meet some pretty special people, actually. Katie Asher, who's the mother of Houston, she's told us the beginning of his story where Well, he's one of the first examples of why you should not give vaccines to kids. But he has done amazingly, amazingly. He's also perhaps the first example of how God speaks to children, and now he's 29, but speaks to people even when they have physical or neurological impairments, and perhaps even it becomes clearer or easier to communicate with God when you're on this other wavelength. So,
It's interesting that you say that because before I knew about any of this, I think his name's William Stillman, but he wrote Autism and the God Connection. And he doesn't have as significant of the motor impairment, but he's extremely connected to the metaphysical and the spiritual. And he wrote about this before any of these non-speakers had a way to communicate.
So before the break, I was asking Houston whether he had any friends who also communicated with the with their soul, with heaven, with God.
All
All
speakers.
all non-speakers
Yes. See. More.
there.
Bang.
All non-speakers see more than regular minds.
Because people with regular minds are distracted by everything else.
We have the
Give
gifts to see how God is one and how he is love and how he does everything to bring people to
him.
So yes, he does have a lot of friends. And what's so incredible about this ability to hear everyone's thoughts, that's non-local. They can communicate with each other because it's energy. Just like we can communicate with our cell phones, we can communicate with people that we're not in the same locality with.
Yes.
It's the same type of thing because what's being transmitted is electromagnetic energy. And Houston said that thought and radiation are actually very similar.
So it sounds like you can speak also, besides pointing to the letters.
So why don't you explain that? My speech is
No.
my speech is slow.
Yeah.
My my pointing
Mm.
is better.
Better.
However, I'm trying to develop my
speech.
I'm trying to develop my speech. One of the things that I learned when he would start explaining what he was experiencing in his body was I started doing a massive amount of research, which is included in the book. And one of the things I learned is what people don't realize is, stay right here, you're good, you're good. Is speech is 100% motor. And people don't realize that. And so if you have a motor impairment, that significantly impacts your ability to communicate through speech. And the other thing that people don't realize is speech requires 7 different body systems working together and over 100 different muscles in order to navigate all of these sounds that we recognize as words that have meaning. And for him, pointing is much easier because it's gross motor.
Mm-hmm.
And he still struggles with the echolalia and the apraxia, where his body will shout things that he doesn't want it to do. But it's a very complex neurology. And that is what we have discovered. It has nothing to do with his intelligence. It's all basically a bunch of motor pathways that are connected to the wrong things.
Uh-huh. So now, okay, so your book is called The Book of Heaven, A Story of Hope for the Outcasts, the Broken, and Those Who Lost Faith.
Mm-hmm.
So what, so who, I mean, who are you trying, like, what are you trying in a sentence or two, what are you trying to do with this?
A couple of things. For his message of what he has seen in the spiritual realm and the hope through Christ, that he wants that message out there loud and clear, that he is a witness to it and he wants to proclaim it. Very similarly to how people have a near-death experience and they experience the spiritual realm. He's in that state of being all the time because he's so disconnected from his physical body. He's in that etheric state.
Okay.
And so that's part of it. My message is I want to educate parents about what autism really is, that it's actually a sensory and motor difference, a significant difference, and we need to understand what they're experiencing. But the other part is about if you've lost faith and you've lost hope and you've come to a place of total and complete despair, how on earth do you ever come to the place of faith again? And that is the journey that I go on and what I want to take everyone through.
Uh-huh. Okay. So have you been, well, when did the book come out?
It actually came out in 2021. And of course, no one knew about it because no one knew.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible story. And those who knew me knew the story. But to get to a wider audience, it was going to be difficult. And so I spoke with someone and they said, you really need a book agent to help you, but they're going to need scientific proof.
Uh-huh.
And so I went about trying to find a scientist who could validate what I knew he was experiencing.
Uh-huh.
And when I did, that actually led to us being involved with a documentary that was being produced with this one particular scientist who was doing this specific research. And that led to a podcast. It's called the Telepathy Tapes, where Houston was featured in several episodes in season 1. And that has basically, it went all the way to number one. It beat out Joe Rogan last Christmas, and people were just absolutely astonished. And so people started reading our story, and I started getting all these messages saying that their lives had totally changed. And then all of these families who had non-speaking children began the process of beginning to teach their children to spell. And it drastically changed their lives. And one of the greatest things that happens is I get a message from moms who literally didn't know their child, and now they do because of our story. And they are saying the exact same things. I had a mom the other day who was terrified to even hope for her child, and he's 8 years old. And he starts spelling, and she doesn't believe in it. She's terrified to believe anything more than what she's been told. And then he's very excited. But then her son starts spelling. And it was profound. One of the very first things he spelled was describe God's love. And the little boy spelled family. And then going past that, he starts becoming a little preacher and starts telling everyone, do not go on cruise control with God, Oh, wow. And these parents had no idea that their son understood what God was, that he was even aware of God, or that he had any relationship. And yet here was this 8-year-old with a profound faith and hoping to be able to have a voice so he could tell what he knew, what he believed, and what he experienced. And our story includes all of the scientific research that I did, which is massive. But the more incredible thing that I think it includes was Houston began spelling out and describing scenes in heaven that he would have no possible way of knowing. And that was back to your question that you asked earlier, how does he know these things? And it's because they have seen, they're not just hearing about it or being taught like we are. They're actually experiencing the living, active love of God Almighty in the heavenlies.
Huh. Well, okay. Houston, what you and your mother are doing, spreading the word that first of all, of hope, like you said, and just showing people how amazing you are, which gives them hope that their child could also be like that, and also just gives people hope in general that God works in strange ways,
Really strange way.
and beautiful ways.
One of the this is how Houston ended his part of the book. And Houston wrote a good part of the book, so I want everyone to know that. And he says, malevolence and love fight for us. That's going on inside us and around us. He gave me a task to tell what I've seen, to tell of his love, to be his herald. I'm without any doubt friends with Jesus. I don't want anyone to die not being his friend. Most importantly, hear this. Anything is possible if you believe.
Oh, wow. Okay. I hope you will, this is all incredibly important what you're doing, but also, I hope you will I'm going to try to get this show today. I didn't know what to expect really, but I'm going to try to get this to RFK Jr. And you should be trying too to reach
I'm
him.
trying. I've got some connections and I am working very hard at them.
Because this is, I mean, this, I've had some cases where where parents have said, like the one I'm thinking of was a legal case, and where there was an autistic girl, and she developed autism after the shot. And I've had other cases where I've like asked the parent, when did this start? And it's always after a shot. And so the idea that drug manufacturers are trying to say that there's no connection is a tragedy, is horrible, and needs to stop. You know, these vaccines need to stop.
Well,
Uh,
people understand what's in them, and people should know that the aluminum adjuvant, it's got 13, it's got an atomic number of 13, and it's that 3 electrons in the valence shell, which is the outer layer, which determines how electronegative it is. And that's why vaccine manufacturers use it, is to force a reaction. Unfortunately, and this is the part that they don't tell you, they can't make it safe because they can't control how that reaction takes place in the human body. In one person, it doesn't have that much of effect because it reaches homeostasis quickly, and in someone else, it goes off like a bomb, and they can't predict it and they can't control it. And that is, and I do think that you can have a more susceptible immune system that could possibly make it easier or less able for your body to react in a good way that is helpful as opposed to harmful.
Yes.
It is controlled as opposed to uncontrolled.
Yes, it depends, of course, it depends upon each individual. Well, Houston, I am very happy to have met you. I think you're an amazing young man. I'm happy to have met you too. Let me tell people again the name of the book. The Book of Heaven is what it's called, A Story of Hope for the Outcasts, the Broken, and Those Who Lost Faith. So it's a memoir written by Katie Asher, the mom, and her son, Houston. Who wrote more? I want to ask you.
I'm the wordy one. Here's what Houston does is he says the most profound, brilliant things in the smallest number of words. And his ability to express what he sees is really this ability to show that all of creation is longing, is alive and is longing for the sons of God to be revealed so that they can be released from their imprisonment, that's what it says in scripture.
Well, thank you both very, very much. I wish you all the best.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for listening. You've been listening to Dr. Carole's Couch, and I'm your psychiatrist.